In every city, there are homes that hold more than walls. They hold a family's story, decades of struggle, of sacrifice, of staying when it would have been easier to leave. But across Atlanta, too many of those stories are caught in a hidden struggle, not by neglect, but by a system that doesn't see these families still holding on.
After my grandmother passed, it was confusing. We didn't know what steps to take. My mom, she lived in the home and took care of the home. And so a lot of things my grandmother took care of when she was alive. So for my mom, having to step up and do things, it was a bit confusing. And a lot of things concerning the home, she didn't really understand. My mom and I have worked hard to keep up with the property, and that has put us under a lot of pressure. Financial strain because she is aging. She's elderly. She lives in the home. She's on a fixed income. So I and my aunt Cynthia, we stepped in to kind of help her. My mom, her name is not the head. She's not on the deed alone. She didn't qualify for grants and different kind of funding that, would come alongside and help her as a senior in her home. We have applied for the homestead exemption several times, but we've been denied. And so that's kind of gave us a thwarted view of this system that is supposed to be in place to help seniors. We've done everything right, but we keep getting denied. It almost makes you not want to get the help when you constantly are being told no. It's like, how many times am I going to keep running into this brick wall?
Homestead exemptions are often denied for heirs property owners because the ownership isn't clear. When you go in to apply for the homestead exemption, they want to have the name that they have in their system be the person who's applying. And, when the person on title is deceased, it can be hard to get the homestead exemption until the deeds are brought up to date. That's also a good point that often heirs don't understand there is a homestead exemption. They don't, if you go to a closing and buy, when you buy your house, a lot of times the closing attorney is going to mention, you need to go and apply for the homestead exemption. People who are inheriting their homes don't necessarily know that information. And so they don't know where they need to go and what they need to do.
And even being able to anticipate what the taxes are going to be. And so as families go through the probate process and they've applied for a homestead exemption or applied for the deed to be changed in name, the taxes could change as well. So the senior exemption could come off, which means that their taxes will be higher if the decedent had a senior exemption. Or in the interim time when they lose the homestead exemption, if they don't have any homestead exemption, their taxes are going to rise as well.
Taxes affect the chance for the family to be able to keep their homes because as the taxes go up and they can't afford it, they're much more, they're in much more danger of a tax foreclosure where they'll lose the home, or also investors coming in and trying to swindle them out of a lot of the equity of the home because they're afraid of losing it to the tax sale. So those are both ways that a tax sale will affect it.
I think kind of what the gates show is that whereas the ownership might make sense, of course, my mom's going to live here. She's always lived here. The programs and the different resources that might be available for you all of a sudden start to get a little murkier and a little harder to access once you have that. All of these vulnerabilities that you step into, whether it's legal vulnerabilities around who actually owns the property, whether it's financial vulnerabilities and who's paid the property taxes, or whether it's just vulnerabilities of the home falling apart and falling into disrepair, to me, that equals a loss of wealth. Each of those in their own way represents a way that a family might lose wealth. We want families to stay in Atlanta. We want communities to stay in Atlanta. We want folks to still have a touch point here in the city. Oftentimes, if their grandparents were from here, if their parents were from here, if they went to school here, the loss of that property also does a lot as far as reducing those connections, reducing those ties. Family property does keep a kind of, a legacy intact, a connection intact. And that's one of the things that we risk losing as well.
We need to see county governments in Georgia and around the country make changes to their homestead tax relief policies. And there's a few things that would be very meaningful to help heirs property owners. The first is allowing flexible proof of ownership. We know that the probate process takes years. It costs a lot of money. You need access to lawyers and the legal system. And then finally, we need more outreach about the property tax homestead exemption. So many heirs property owners are not aware that their tax bill could be significantly lower. And we know this is one of the primary risks of loss that heirs property owners face. So we need our local governments and really all of our community stakeholders to help push this information out into the community so that folks are informed and can get that relief.
But not every story ends in heartbreak. Some families find a way through patience, persistence, and the right kind of guidance. The Pemberton sisters remind us that legacy doesn't just happen, it's built. One conversation, one compromise, one signature at a time.
When my parents passed, which was in 2012 and 2016, those first conversations were really around grief, trying to understand how this happened, what should we do now? And it took us some time actually to get to what to do with the home. One sister wanted to stay in the house, but she couldn't afford to stay in the house. Another sister wanted it to be, homestead. Anybody could come and anybody could stay. And another sister, she wanted to live in the home. So it was just very interesting. So we had to have these real conversations. Can you afford? Can you purchase? And where we landed was using some of the finances, the bank finances, to pay for repairs while we were going through this 2 to 3 year trying to figure out what to do with the home.
And with good counsel, their family's inheritance transformed from confusion into clarity.
Good legal counsel was the key to our successful, I would say, transition of the properties and the heired assets that our parents left us. And what was interesting is the attorney brought us in and sat down and just wanted to hear everybody's story. I would say one of the things that she said after she heard everybody's story and kind of went through, these are the services I can provide. She said, I need you all to be truthful. If there's anything that you know about, if there are any other children that you know about, let me know. She says, I'm about helping you and supporting you. But if you get into these fights and you can't agree, then I'm going to pull out of the counsel. These attorneys gave us very wise counsel. They were supportive and they knew the loopholes to warn us about so that we would make sure that the transfer was legal, it was solid, and there was nothing that could come back. No one could come back and say, what happened here or that belongs to me.
The Pembertons teach us that planning isn't just paperwork, it's preservation. A will can save a home, but wisdom saves a legacy.
Understanding the probate process and then having good legal counsel, it can really be a blessing to families, understanding the process and knowing what to do, giving them a peace of mind that they ordinarily wouldn't have. When you have a plan, when you have a legal person, a person that's trained to walk through this process, then it's going to make it much better for the family. It's going to give the heirs the opportunity to work together versus fighting.
I love education. And I really do believe that if we collaborate with our industry partners that we do business with, that we let them know our platform, how important it is that, my client may be also their client. And if they have that common thread of us saying the same thing, teaching them about the probate process, teaching them what needs to happen, they're going to be better prepared. I know that our industry partners will be willing to help because even if they're not looking at it for their clients, they may need it personally. We never know where we're going to find ourselves. So I believe it's extremely important. And, we should all link together and move forward and make this a movement.
Home ownership is the core to starting on that journey to generational wealth. So home ownership works in all communities for all families. What we must remember is just being that homeowner is not enough. You have to understand the components that comes with home ownership. One is maintenance. One is ensuring that your house appreciates in value. And the other is paying it forward. And then having the plan in place so that your heirs will receive the house not only in its physical form, but understanding how they will be able to benefit from it in their lifetime and then pass it on as an asset in the future. The beginning is home ownership.
For the Raglins, time stood still. A home meant to carry generations forward now sits in silence, caught between what was promised and what never came to be.
So I would say not probating the property has affected or impacted my family in a way that a quarter of a century later, we are still managing this process. So 2 generations into this, we are now trying to create a plan to, I guess, in a way, I would say, fulfill my grandparents' wishes and to honor the legacy that they attempted to leave for us. At this point, the house is vacant and it's deteriorating. And when I look at the house, I feel disappointed. I feel sad. And at this point, I now feel a little bit of guilt because it's impacting the neighbors and the neighborhood. There's a level of stress because the children of my grandparents are aging, and we should feel some sense of urgency to get this done so that there's some level of resolution. I wish that there were programs available that would address the affordability of the legal aspects of resolving properties that required probate. It is an undertaking that we weren't aware of by the time we were brought into it, and we being the children, nieces, and nephews of my grandparents. We were it was like blindsided because we didn't know that they were struggling to pay property taxes or to maintain the property. And in the process of stepping in, we realized the cost of the taxes and the things that are necessary to maintain the house, in addition to the probate, have just been, that cost is almost like, whoa, okay, is this something that we really, really want to do? And how quickly can we get it done? We've spoken with several people, and we've learned that in speaking with these attorneys, that there may be multiple levels to probating the property, which in itself will cause an escalation in the cost to remedy the situation or to resolve the probate. I wish there were opportunities or access for us to be able to seek some type of financial support in getting that done. It's not that we don't want the home. It's not that we don't want to do something with the home to maintain it and keep it in the family, but it is overwhelming trying to navigate the process, not knowing how long it's going to take and how much it will actually cost to get that done.
I think that there can be a lot of resources and support that could make, probate, the understanding of it more accessible to families with, maybe income challenges or just understanding it. I think there's education is key. But before education, awareness. I'm always going to go back to awareness. I know at most schools, there's like a resource center for the parents, for the community. At our libraries, that could be a resource center. If we make this more commonplace.
Families need support in a number of ways. There is, first of all, the importance of outreach and education and allowing families to have the tools at their disposal to protect their home. And that involves estate planning. It also involves proactive communication among family members. It's a process, and families do need support every step of the way. They need time to be able to make these decisions, and they need culturally competent resources in the communities. You need people who are grounded in the community to deliver the message and to encourage people to plan ahead for how they want to leave their legacy. And that takes time. It takes resources, and it requires building relationships in the community. So many heirs property owners are not aware that their tax bill could be significantly lower. And we know this is one of the primary risks of loss that heirs property owners face. So we need our local governments and really all of our community stakeholders to help push this information out into the community so that folks are informed and can get that relief.
Heirs Property is a grand opportunity for a community to elevate itself as it relates to wealth.
The stories of the Gates, the Pembertons, and the Raglins are not separate chapters. They're one connected truth that legacy, equity, and home are all bound by how we care for what's been left to us. This isn't just about property. It's about people, families, fighting to stay rooted in a city that's constantly changing around them. Every unprobated will, every denied exemption, every vacant home, each one represents an opportunity to honor the families and communities that made Atlanta and all who call it home.
I believe that if we put our heads together and if we work together with the common ground to make this common conversations, I see it. I see the end. I see it. It's going to take a lot of work, but it's also going to take a lot of effort and support from each other and collaboration.
The question now isn't if we act, it's how soon. Because the real wealth of Atlanta isn't measured in development or dollars. It's measured in the families still facing the hidden struggle and in the communities we build when we help them stay.
My family has held on to this home for over 50 years. It's my childhood home. We have so many memories in the house. We still remain, and that's a good feeling because my grandfather, coming out of the service, he purchased that home. And it's my grandmother's dying wish for us to keep the home, remain in the home, never sell the home. And so my mom is genuinely trying to honor the wishes of her late mother.